Okay, so some other examples of instrumental reasoning. Um, and there's two I'm going to show here that aren't ecological per se, but I think they help you understand kind of what's going on. So run, there's this problem of, let's say, that you have a paper to write. You don't have time or a skill to write the paper. So an instrumental kind of solution would be say, well, let's outsource it. Let's find somebody else that can write this paper for me. So here's a website. It says stuck with your academic or business paper, and this is a paper writing service. And you can specify any deadline. It's 100% confidential, academic experts, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. So there's a problem that you have, and here's a solution. Now, if your concern is just the grade, this isn't necessarily an issue. But if you have some understanding of education and higher education is about being the pursuit of the higher good and about people developing certain skills and talents and grades reflecting honestly what people have accomplished, then there's a whole range of issues that occur about why this might be wrong. You'll find people that have strong views on this, but the short story would be if many people start taking this kind of route towards the academic experience, it's going to eventually corrupt the entire enterprise to the point where if somebody sees that someone has a degree from a certain university or has a certain major or whatever, they can't make any assumptions about what that person has learned or about what values they have, because it's been so thoroughly compromised by an instrumental kind of means, ends justifying the means kind of framework. So a similar view, what some might say, is that certain governors have proposed that they could save large amounts of money by, quote, streamlining universities. So Governor Scott Walker in 2015 proposed changing the University of Wisconsin mission from something that had been called the Wisconsin Way, which is included like the search for truth and university system about improving the human condition. So pretty high expectations, a pretty lofty goal for what the university was. And he wanted to change it to simply to meet the state's workforce needs. So this is suggesting that what's going on in a university is a lot of stuff, a lot of hooey philosophers debating stuff or people doing research and stuff that isn't really important, when what university should be about is to meet workforce needs, to be job factories. So some people would say, yeah, that's what we need to do to streamline. Other people said, no, what the problem here is you're having this instrumental view of what universities are about, and you're missing out on some of their larger missions to instill values of critical thinking, to generate new knowledge, to do things like search for the truth, and try to, say, have studies, African American studies or feminist studies, environmental studies, where you're not just about trying to make money, but you're trying to ask bigger questions about where are we as a culture, where are we as a planet, an ecosystem headed. And you can see there's some tension there between having a more complex view of what a university is supposed to do and having an instrumental view. So you can also see instrumental reasoning in the way different organizations, namely oil companies like Exxon, have set up different foundations to funnel money through to different deniers of climate change. And there's lots of records on this. This is from an Open Secrets, the Open Secrets website, which is an organization that tracks this sort of thing. But these are organizations that are taking a very instrumental view towards climate change. They're saying, look, we have a business where to make money, we need to burn coal and promote the use of fossil fuel and oil and all that. And this system of science is getting in our way. So let's take a very practical approach to that. We're going to try to undermine it by sowing seeds of doubt. And this is very similar to what corporations did when concerns were raised about lead paint, when concerns were raised about smoking. This is a tried and true tactic. And then you can also see instrumental reasoning in the way people that are responsible for climate change try to shift the blame to others. And so we talked about how this ad campaign from Chevron is trying to say individuals are the ones that need to make changes. and they're being fairly circumspect about the amount of resources that they're willing to put into making a change. So that tactic can also be seen as a demonstration of not ecological or systemic thinking, but a very narrow focused instrumental kind of how we're going to maximize profits reasoning. You can also, we're going to talk later in this semester about sprawl, about the way in which we designed our cities and the way in which certain desires we have led to certain patterns of consumption. So our desires to live in McMansions, or of developers to convince us that we want to live in McMansions, leads us to do more commuting, which leads us to use a lot more gas. And there's different diagrams you can see here of cities that show where people work and then where people live. And to the extent that there's a big difference between where they live and where they work, you're going to have a ton of resources used commuting back and forth. Especially with a dispersion pattern like this, it's unlikely that many of these people are riding trains. And that one of the things we'll talk about later in the course is that if you can convince people that they don't want to live in situations like this, that they'd be happier in dense urban environments with lots of fun amenities and coffee shops and whatnot, that you can get people to live in smaller areas where they would consume less resources, both in terms of size of housing and the kinds of commutes they need to engage in. And then you can also look at McDonald's, and just studying the physical layout of a McDonald's restaurant is a fascinating exercise in understanding instrumental reasoning. So what they have realized, and the kind of people they cater to, is people in cars. And so their whole infrastructure is set up to make it easy, very easy for cars to pull in, to circle around and go through the drive-thru. Most new McDonald's now have 2 windows at least. Some of them even have a third, so that God forbid you don't need to wait. And if you're a pedestrian, you're going to have a harder time accessing McDonald's. And in fact, the design of McDonald's makes it such that the corner doesn't have much life going on it, because you can't directly access the store or the retail from the sidewalk. So the pedestrian is sit here thinking, what the heck, how do I? And you have to either play chicken here and cross, or you have to come over here. But it's definitely not geared up. The front door is facing the parking lot. It's not facing the street. And oftentimes you'll see on this back side, there may be some fake windows or nothing, but it's presenting a pretty dead view to the street, making it less pedestrian friendly, and thereby encouraging more car use and making it less likely that you're going to have walkable neighborhoods that are more eco-friendly. And then factory farming certainly fits in the model of instrumental reasoning. If we can pack more chickens in a smaller space, we can maximize profit. If we can have bigger tractors that can cover more ground and pull larger equipment, we can maximize profit. And if we can have hog farms that have nothing but hogs and a lot of them, and then the swimming pool in front, or the pool of manure, but you're engaging in levels of industrialization that Mother Nature never really intended. So it's not fun for the animals. You can have more disease and pathogens passed among them quickly because they're so crowded. And then certainly tractors like this require a lot of fossil fuel. So you're setting up systems that may make sense in the short run, may seem to be efficient, but they have these costs or externalities that are imposed on society that make these choices seem less wise. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed. That's our take on instrumental reasoning and how it relates to ecological problems. Thank you.